Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Let's go on ahead and get started with today's webinar. My name is Gary Case, and I am Principal Consultant with Pink Elephant, and my topic today is the top 5 skills for lean leaders. So I want to be upfront right now as we go through and we start talking about the top 5 skills. These skills that I've captured and we're going to discuss today are from my perspective. I am sure that you could line up 10 other people and they may all come up with their own set of skills that may be a little bit different from what I have approached today. As we go through and we start looking at it, there is a development model for lean leaders that we look at, and specifically from an IT perspective. And I'm going to touch on many of these today, more from a skill set. And I know there's probably some people out there who may be thinking, well, wait a minute, some of these are more tools that are used as a part of lean than a skill set. And I would agree with you to an extent. But what I have found is that there are many times when any type of tool is used, it is not used correctly because there are no skills that are being applied to the tool. And quite often, it ends up as being a checkbox exercise. They say conduct an A3, so we build an A3, check the box. It's not how we manage the A3 or go to Gemba. We check the box. We went to Gemba. It's not what we did when we were in the Gemba. So I'm going to approach this, and you're going to see that there's going to be some crossovers into the, many different areas on the skill sets that I am going to talk about. But ultimately, if you look in the middle there, that true north values, that we always have to want to challenge people to improve and improve and improve. And we do that through having a Kaizen mindset. We go see as a part of the Gemba. We really encourage the teamwork, that everyone works together and respect everyone. And other things that we have to look at is that how do we commit to our own as a leader self-development, and how do we help others develop, and how do we ensure that we have that whole continuous improvement mentality on an ongoing basis. And then we get into overall the vision, the goals, and how do we ensure that that gets communicated and bought into, and everybody's moving in the right direction, all for the right reasons here. So without any further ado, let's go on ahead and get started. And again, this is from my perspective. I feel that the top skill is our skills that we need when we do a Gemba walk. Let's be clear here, a Gemba walk is different than a gallery walk, where the gallery walk is more about, as a leader, I am just making myself visible to others that are out there. The Gemba walk is the skills that we need to have is not only as we go out and see where the work is being performed, it actually is a trigger for daily Kaizen events. And so the skills we're bringing to the table here is asking the right questions and listening as we're going through the Gemba, and witnessing and watching and observing what other people are doing. And we need to do that, and with the right intent, that we want to get information that is there. And this really allows us also to focus on that self-development, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Plus, it's going to go on ahead and allow us to help develop others during the Gemba walk. Now, I didn't mention up front, which I should have, we do want to go on ahead, and if you have any questions, just please use the chat that is up there and available, and we will go on ahead and we will hopefully have time at the end to address some of the questions, but if not, we will capture all the questions and then you'll get a response back out to your particular question. But hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end. And the Gemba walk, it's the right skills of how we work with our employees, our staff members out there, that we have to always show respect to them. And we do that through, again, our ability of questioning and listening to what they really have to say. And another aspect of that Gemba walk is really, it's about a visual management, so that we make sure all the facts are collected and it's visible to everyone. And as a leader, as we go out, again, we use that time very wisely to, again, start having discussions around what do the facts mean, what's our visual management telling us, what are the opportunities that we have out there that we can, use this for. All of these are key things that we want to really be a part of. And again, it's these sub-skills that you could say that really makes this Gemba walk so absolutely incredibly important that's there. And if you don't have, the right approach to the Gemba walk, it could really offend some of the people that, you're wanting to really work more closely with. And it really provides us, again, this is that opportunity that we can really start talking about that true north and overall what is our, a vision of what we want to be obtaining, and how do we continue to have all those visions and goals and objectives. How do we get that alignment across the organization? And, again, we have to also understand that there's going to be different stakeholders, different opinions, and that's fine, because that all leads to learning, and it leads also to the ability that we do respect the, our staff members that is out there, and that also allows us to do some self-development. So when we look at the objectives of a Gemba, first it's to support the employees that are out there. So we have to understand and recognize when we have barriers that is preventing our people from being successful, and how can we remove those particular barriers that are out there. That's a key area. We have to be leaders as teachers. And again, so that's a subset of what we have to look at, is we have to be able to explain why we maybe have certain policies in place or quality controls in place, but at the same time, we have to be listening to what our staff members are telling us, because they may have an alternative view and saying that this activity and this policy is really hindering us from being able to deliver more value. And then again, it's promoting the overall vision, strategies, goals, objectives, all those true north areas that we really need to be kind of focused on. And probably one of the biggest areas from a leader's skill at the Gemba is they have to be the right role model. And because what happens is when they, are not being the right role model, they basically are giving permission for everyone else not to follow process, not to, respect others, etc. That is, something that we really need to be concerned about. And remember, as a leader, your actions speak much louder than your words. So again, when we're at Gemba, we have to have the ability to view things from many different potentials that are out there. So as part of the Gemba, we want to look at the potential view. This is when we're looking and identifying key people in our organization that we can now take in hand and self-develop them into lean leaders also. We always have to be looking for the waste view. We have to be looking at a problem view. We have to be looking at a Kaizen view, and also the solution view that we want out there. Just be very, careful as we start going into some of this, that, if we always want to come up with a solution, that's probably the least view you would want to look at, because we really want to encourage and facilitate the discussions where we're going to be having our team identify what those solutions really are. And again, a part of our questioning skills is, of course, the asking the why question that is out there. And I think another question that we also should be comfortable asking and encouraging our staff members to ask is, besides why, the other is what if. What if we do it this way? What if we do it that way? So again, at the Gemba, we have all kinds of opportunities there to, again, show respect, but get information, to share information, to teach others, and for us to learn ourselves is absolutely critically important. And when I watch organizations and I see them do the Gemba, it's more of a checkbox in many organizations, and that's not fair to our staff members that's there. We really need to have this and do everything correctly. And so that's why I really think this is a skill of how we go about and do the Gemba, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm just going to go to the Gemba and check the box that I did it. The second is about, again, develop yourself. And some people say, well, is that really a skill? I think it is. It's the skill, because you need to identify that you have opportunities for improving yourself. It's about your respecting yourself and your self-discipline, and it's knowing what you are good at and what your opportunities are that are out there, and what are those development opportunities that you want to go on ahead and bring on board. And the skill is making sure also that we identify a good mentor that is going to be able to be our coach and our mentor and provide us feedback, because that's one of the key things about develop yourself is you got to be open to that overall feedback, on an ongoing basis. And then also, if you have your a student, someone that you are helping self-develop, and it could be more than one that you're helping, get their development up and running so they can become lean leaders also. Again, that's a skill of how we work with them, but we have to start within ourselves that is there. And quite often, people don't have the skill to look internally and say, I need to improve in these areas, and I need to now find me my mentor that I can work with and provide feedback from and continue to develop my own skills. We have leader standard work. Again, it's about not so much that do we have it, it's how do we do it, how do we have, we review it, we always look for new best practices as part of our leader standard work, and then how do we make sure as the right role models, we're again going through this, the proper leader standard work. And this is the one thing that drives, I think, some of the wrong behavior in organizations is that they do have leader standard work that will say something like, go to the Gemba, create A3s, hold a Kaizen event. And so they will check the box, I've done that, but it's our skills again that I come back to of how well do we do that activity when we are out there doing it. So again, looking at that leader standard work is a key part of developing yourself. And then you look at, again, any formal programs or training you can get involved into, one-on-one coaching. Again, pursue that opportunity with a mentor, get their feedback, be very open. And again, that's a skill set that we've got to learn to be open to that feedback. It's not punishment. It is simply opportunities. And that's the way we have to really look at this from an ongoing perspective. And then also make sure that we can challenge ourselves by taking on varied jobs and tasks that we are not comfortable in doing, because that again will get us an opportunity to develop other aspects of what we need to be doing and gaining experience and knowledge around on an ongoing basis. So when you think about, again, some of the self-development, and I told you earlier that there was going to be some crossover, because there is. And I've already tried to bring that into play, but one of the things that we look at from self-development is, again, how do we work self-development into when we're at the Gemba? And we need to really learn to manage, from the Gemba that is there. We have to be very open-minded, that I've talked about. We have to be able to observe the work. We cannot rush in and identify the problems ourselves. We cannot identify the solutions ourselves. We want to be good at asking the right questions and making sure that we really are having active listening, a participatory listening on an ongoing basis, so that we truly can continue to go on ahead and build up our own skills, but also as a sign of showing respect. Plus, we're going to get a lot more information by relying on our teams than looking at, as a leader, I'm responsible. So one of the key things that when we're talking about our leadership capabilities and when we're at the Gemba and part of our self-development is all about learning how we facilitate meetings, how we facilitate discussions, because we, as a leader, should be more in a facilitation versus a command and control or directing, meetings and, sessions that are going on. So we always want to make sure we have that tie-in that is there. And we have to make sure that we continue to have our discipline to continue to practice and self-develop on an ongoing basis so that we really can improve ourselves but also we then advance that out to the rest of our team, that it's about how do we continue to improve our overall culture of looking at ongoing improvement, and those are key things. And that helps overall, again, with the team progress, and how do we keep people moving forward as a part of what we're doing with our communication and with our self-development, that we may not even be comfortable in our own shoes on what our goals and objectives are and what those true north values are. And so we have to make sure that's part of our self-development, and then our ability and skills to get that communicated across to our teammates so that everybody is moving in the same direction. And we got to think in terms also that when we start talking about facilitating our teams, we need to make sure that we can have clear accountability that is out there, and then make sure that everyone is aware of what they're accountable for, and how do we monitor, measure, and track and report against that accountability. So we want to make sure that we have plans that we do put in place with our employees. We also then, as our skill number 3, look at how do we develop others. So we have to make sure that as a leader, we have our eyes open, we're listening, we're observing, so that we can find people, and at the Gemba is where we often do this, that we can identify the people that we can coach and self-develop as potential lean leaders, because that's really what our goal should be. And we want to make sure that we do this at the Gemba, as I mentioned earlier, because that's really the key area that, we need to have this, ability, and it should be happening just as a natural part of our day-to-day activities, or however often you go to Gemba, that is there. And part of developing others is putting them, just like we put ourselves in some positions that we may not have expertise or knowledge around, but it helps us learn. We want to do the same with the people we're developing. So again, put them in situations outside of their comfort zone, so to speak, and that helps them advance their skills, advance their confidence levels, their knowledge, their expertise. All of those are key things. And another aspect is also, again, from a skill perspective, when we're starting to talk about develop others, it's about our performance dialogues that we have to have that are out there. And oftentimes performance dialogues may only happen once a year, oftentimes around, appraisal time on an annual basis. But what we should be doing is having performance dialogues throughout the entire year. Performance dialogues could be weekly or monthly or however often, because it's, again, clarifying objectives. It's about providing support and seeing if there is any need for support. And it's also about providing feedback that is there. And this is all kind of a skill of how we approach that performance dialogue, so it becomes a true win-win activity that we do. And I mentioned the role model, and absolutely critically important as we're developing others. Our actions, as I mentioned earlier, are much stronger than any words that we're going to use. And another aspect, to me, and we start talking about developing others, is our ability to understand we have a skills gap in our organization. So how do we properly, from a skill perspective, create a skills knowledge matrix, so we identify what skills we have, what skills do we need, and then what's the gap, and then what is going to be the gap that and our plan to close that particular gap that we always have to make sure we're considering. So the fourth skill is, again, and some people are going to say, well, that's really a mindset, as it says, Gary, but it's still, in my mind, it's a skill that we have to look at, is that we have to go into, number one, having that Kaizen mindset, is that we have to have the skill of looking for problems and encouraging our staff members to look for problems. And that could cross over into self-develop and developing ourselves also. But we have to have that discipline that is going to be out there. We always have to think in terms of changing that mindset and encouraging people to not only look for problems, but understand problems are important, problems are valuable, and problems lead us to opportunities and the ability to provide more value out there to our customers. And we have to make sure that we are looking at this on a daily basis as a part of daily Kaizen and observing what is going on. We do that through our observations in a formal Gemba, but we also have other opportunities out there when we're having staff meetings and things come up, when you're looking at a visual management board that is maybe outside of a formal Gemba, have discussions, or you are in a discussion with an employee. All of these are things that we want to take a look at, and then we may want to have a structured approach, more of a Kaizen event, and again, using the DMAIC model of define, measure, analyze, improve, and control there. And again, it's about how we work through that Kaizen event, and oftentimes we'll have a Kaizen lead, but again, we've got to be able to now provide the coaching to the Kaizen lead and make sure that everyone is kind of moving in the right direction. So there's a lot of, different things, and, and there's a lot of integration between these, because nothing is just going to be a standalone. And so last, one more on the Kaizen, I'm sorry. So again, the importance here is that in many organizations that I work in, that people don't like problems. That just is the attitude, and people talk about, and if you follow an ITEL on problem management, it takes them forever to want to log a problem because nobody wants to have a problem, because that means typically they're going to have to talk to someone in the senior leadership, and that's going to be a negative conversation as opposed to a very positive that, hey, we have a problem. Great. Let's do something about it. Let's get a permanent solution through root cause analysis and understand what we're doing, implement the permanent solution, and voila, we've created more value that is out there. And so we have to have the ability to identify the problems. We got to look for those problems very seriously, and we need to then accept them as a part of, this is something we need. It becomes a part of our DNA, and then we have to look for those solutions that are there. And then we have to make sure that as a leader that we have the ability and skills to negotiate to get the right resources in place for the right time, for the right purpose, so that we truly can do the root cause and come up with a permanent solution, and then also be part of any implementation that may be a part of that permanent solution. And then another skill that I brought in here that I like to talk about is they use the terms sharing lessons learned here. And it's important to share lessons learned, but here's the skill that I'm going to tell you that is even more important, and that I always like people to change or add to this. Most organizations will capture lessons learned. Most organizations will share lessons learned. Most organizations do not use lessons learned. It's like we have to relearn the same lessons over and over and over. So the skill set comes in that we have to make sure we have the capability and get the right people engaged, and to go back and say, okay, when we did this previously, what were the lessons that we learned, and what are we going to do different this time? Absolutely critical. So the last that I have here, and again, to me, it is a skill. We have to have the skill to focus on the customer. The customer is the only one that can say if they received value. We can talk all we want as a provider organization about delivering value, and we can talk until we're blue in the face, but the customer is the only one that can say that they got the value that's there. Everything we should be doing should be focused on the customer. So again, there's a couple tools that we typically use, the voice of the customer and critical to quality. But again, it's not so much that we use the tools, it's about our skills to use the tools. So again, coming back in and having the ability in our confidence level through our self-development, and in the Gemba, the asking the why, having a lot of facilitated questions that's going to help us truly understand the customer's requirements and wishes, and then helping, again, working with them through critical to quality tree of really what is going to be the priority of what's the most important to them. And if we just step back and we just think of nothing else about how do we think in value streams, how do we have discussions in value streams, those are all critically important that we have to think in terms of here. And it's a skill of also how do we facilitate a value stream that we go through. And again, we have a team maybe working on that value stream, but as a leader, we want to be able to have the skill sets of challenging them, asking questions, listening to their results. And the value stream, the more you can make this visible, again, the better off it's really going to be, because having visualization of up there helps with a lot of discussions that's going on. It's the skills of using, things such as Post-it notes that help you be able to move things around very fast. So it's really that customer focus is absolutely one of the most critical things that we really have to focus on. But at this point in time, I do want to thank you very much. I hope you have found this to be very helpful. I hope also that you accept it, that this is from my perspective, and also that I interwove many different skills, a subset of skills, into what I think are these top 5 areas from a skills perspective. And there's a lot of integration that does go on, but we need to be good at these, and we need to learn to improve in all of this. And the one thing I would always ask you to do, because I see this too often, is that what happens is it becomes a checkbox exercise when people are implementing lean in an organization. And it doesn't, you can have all the visual management boards, all the A3s, and you can go as many Gemba walks as you want to, but when it comes down to reality, is that it's about how well you actually participate, you use all of these different tools or the Gemba walks or whatever to drive value is what we really need to be doing. So with that, I want to thank everybody and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.